T9T got the fucking juice.
Silver's the new gold.
T9T got the fucking juice.
Silver's the new gold.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. This is going to be pretty quick. Don't want this to be longer than 30 minutes. I'm here with my college football week 4 reactions. A lot of people really want to get my thoughts on Oregon's beatdown on Colorado. In Deion Sanders' words, this was a good old-fashioned butt kicking. And if you guys been listening to the podcast for over the last couple of days, you guys would know that I stupidly picked Colorado to pull off the upset against Oregon, and obviously that didn't come anywhere close to happening, and the game was over by halftime pretty much. Also, got to give my thoughts on Clemson and FSU, Ohio State, and Notre Dame. Before we get into all that, like the video, subscribe to the channel. We go live Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern time. Turn on post notifications so you don't miss when we upload new content or when we go live. We're not just a YouTube channel. Every episode of the podcast is available on all podcasting platforms: Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon. Wherever you get your podcast from, you can find the JT Sports Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to support the podcast, leave us with a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. We will greatly appreciate it. All you got to do is go to Apple and Spotify, type in the JT Sports Podcast, and it will pop up. Or you can go down to the description down below, and there will be the links to the Apple and Spotify versions of the podcast. All right. Now, FSU proved that they're the top team in the ACC right now, beating Clemson 31-24 in overtime. This wasn't a great performance by Florida State, in my opinion. I feel like Clemson outplayed Florida State for the first 3 quarters, and then in the fourth quarter, Clemson just absolutely imploded. And not just in the fourth quarter, the game really started to tilt in Florida State's favor after Kalen DeLoach had that big hit on Cade Klubnik that resulted in a scoop and score touchdown, and it tied the game up at 24-24. And then when Clemson had the opportunity to go ahead and get the field goal, which was from 29 yards out, which would have made this game 27-24, they ended up missing the field goal. And not just that they missed the field goal, but there was questionable play calling, bad clock management. You talk about finding ways to lose a game. Clemson gave you a one-on-one for how to do that. Florida State, defensively, they played really good when it mattered the most. And Florida State is a really good team. Now, I don't know if they're good enough to win it all, because in this game, I would have loved for them to win this matchup a little bit more convincingly. As I just said, I feel like Clemson looked like the better team for the majority of this game. Offensively, they were moving the ball pretty consistently. They were balanced, not just having success throwing the football with Cade Klubnik, but they also had a lot of success on the ground game as well. As a matter of fact, they outgained Florida State in rushing yards 146-22. Florida State didn't look like a better team than Clemson in this game, although they got the win. Florida State, they tend to play their best football when the game is on the line. If you can't finish Florida State and you allow them to hang around and you give them opportunities to stay in the game, they're going to make you pay. And this FSU team reminds me a lot of that 2013 Florida State team. You remember, well, not 2013, but 2014, the year after they won the national championship, when they lost to Oregon in the semifinals and they were coming from behind in pretty much every single game they played in. That Florida State team and FSU had an uncanny ability to be able to flip the switch in the fourth quarter. That's how I look at this 2023 Florida State team. Yeah, they may not play their best football for the first few quarters, but when the game is on the line and they need big plays to stay alive, they are able to make those big plays happen. You got guys such as Keon Coleman, who had 2 touchdowns in this game. Clemson couldn't find any way to stop him. He had a 50-50 ball, really early into overtime, which pretty much sealed the win for Florida State. Clemson, although they look like the better team in this game, they didn't execute to the point that Florida State was able to when the game was on the line. When the game was in balance, Florida State got more big plays. Clemson was unable to get those plays. Dabo Swinney, you got to look at him in this game and you got to ask him, okay, Dabo, so what's your next move? Are you going to start utilizing the transfer portal like Florida State? Or are you just going to continue to have your same approach that you have had over the last couple of years? Because obviously it's not working anymore because Florida State has caught up to you. Now you can look at this and say, well, if it wasn't for the missed field goal, we would have won this game. True. But if you would have utilized the transfer portal and you actually got a good kicker out of the transfer portal, maybe you would have won this game. Maybe Keon Coleman never would have had the opportunity to burn you in overtime if you didn't allow that to happen by having your field goal position or your kicker position up to snow. Clemson just doesn't look like a team that looks like they can compete for a national championship. And it's been like this for the last 2-3 seasons, ever since they were able to make it to the national championship years ago and win it with Trevor Lawrence. This team hasn't had that same level of dominance, in my opinion. They just don't have that same level of execution when the game is in the balance. Florida State, defensively, I felt they played a pretty good game. But offensively, this offense kind of got out to a little bit of a slow start. Jordan Travis and Johnny Wilson connected on a big play. Their last drive of regulation, even though they didn't turn it into points. Then you had Keon Coleman, who was making big plays. It's just the transfer portal is the main reason why Florida State has now overtaken Clemson for being the top team in the ACC. Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson, Jordan Travis, all three of those guys came from the transfer portal. Jared Verse, he came from the transfer portal. All those guys had big impacts on this win for Florida State. Dabo Swinney, he's going to have to change something because there's a very strong chance that maybe this season starts to go really left for Clemson. They may not even be able to win 9-10 games this year. This is the first time since 2010 that Clemson has started out 0-2 in conference play. That's really discouraging. Florida State, on the other hand, you're still undefeated. There's still a lot of football that has to be played. You got to go up against Miami, and I think that Miami game is going to be very close. It could go either way. I think the Hurricanes have a very good chance of being able to pull off the upset. Plus, it's a rivalry game, so you already know how those games tend to go more times than not. But for right now, for any FSU fan that wants to say they're the top dog in the ACC, you now have permission to do so. Because to be the man, you have to beat the man. And what did FSU do finally? They were able to finally knock off Clemson. And the winner of this game ends up winning the ACC the majority of the times. If Florida State ends up some way, somehow going up against Clemson in a rematch in the conference championship game, I still like them to come out on top with the victory because I still think we have yet to see Florida State play their best football the last 2 weeks. Outside of that week 1 win against LSU, this hasn't looked like the same Florida State team that we saw in the win against LSU. Against Boston College, they kind of struggled. Against Clemson, although they got the win, and that's all that really matters at the end, I still feel like they could have been better in a lot of different areas. Offensively, they could have been a little bit better when it came to the play caller late in this game. I don't know why they were trying to take deep shots. Their final drive of the game when they really should have been trying to get into field goal range, but it doesn't really matter at the end of the day because they got the win, but this is still far from a perfect football team. And although I do think that FSU is the team to beat right now in the ACC, I'm still not ready to say that this team is good enough to win it all. I still need to see better execution because watching Clemson play, I didn't really see a Clemson team that was outmatched and was less talented than Florida State, minus the fact that Clemson doesn't utilize the transfer portal like FSU has. But even then, I think this shows you that if you're a Clemson fan, Dabo Swinney and this coaching staff, late in games, they kind of mishandle a lot of things. They have poor clock management, poor play calling. I don't know what happens to Clemson when they get into the fourth quarter of some of these ball games, but they just kind of implode on themselves. And I think that this definitely was a game that Clemson let get away from them. Florida State, they're still undefeated. They win this game in overtime, 31-24. Let me know your thoughts on this matchup down in the comment section down below. Oregon gave Colorado a good old-fashioned butt kicking. They destroyed the Buffs 42-6, and this game was over as soon as it started. As soon as Colorado went down 21-0, I already saw the writing on the wall. And then they started playing the soundbite from Dan Lanning's pre-game motivational speech when he said, "They're chasing clicks, we're chasing wins." Once I heard that, I was like, oh yeah, like Oregon, they're about to try to run it up on Colorado. Not only are they trying to embarrass Colorado, but they're trying to make a statement. And I definitely feel like Oregon did that. Without a doubt, I was wrong. I picked Oregon to lose this game. It was one of the dumbest predictions that I've ever made in all my years doing this. I was really embarrassed watching this game. I didn't even want to check social media because I know people were going to town on me. And you have people saying, you don't know shit about football and blah, 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 blah. Okay. All right. But I was thinking that Colorado's offensive line will at least be able to get Shedeur a little bit of time to throw the football and get the ball out on the perimeter to these wide receivers. Well, he didn't even have more than half a second to even sit back and draw it back before somebody was raining down on them. I mean, you want to see a beatdown on all phases? Oregon did that. Special teams, they had a fake punt. I mean, Oregon came into this game not just with something to prove, but they really wanted to give it to Deion Sanders. Okay, and it's funny how a program that only won one game last season seems to have a large target on their back. I don't know why Oregon felt like they had to play this game like they were in the damn Super Bowl against a team that was a 21-point underdog against them. I get that you really want to prove to people that Colorado isn't really all that great, and we get that, but it's not like people were expecting Colorado to compete in this game, minus me and a few other people. Realistically, most people expected this game to go the way that it went. I don't really think that Oregon gained anything out of this beatdown outside of proving a statement. And I give a lot of props to Dan Lanning for how he had his team ready to go in this game. Yeah, you may disagree with him saying they're chasing clicks, we're chasing wins. I mean, Colorado, I don't think they're doing anything for publicity. They won 3 games. This is obviously a team that has overexceeded expectations. They had an over-under win total of 3.5. Okay, so it's not like Oregon was going up against a team that people were picking to be in the national championship. But Oregon felt disrespected because although Oregon has a really great team, many people, all they were talking about was Colorado and Deion Sanders, and I can understand why Oregon felt like they had something to prove in this game. And Bo Nix, if you didn't know how good Bo Nix was before this game, you definitely know that he's one of the best quarterbacks in college football. I mean, he was lights out from the opening drive to the final whistle before he got taken out for Ty Thompson. Bo Nix was completely flawless in this game. Oregon beat up Colorado up front on both sides of the football. Oregon's offensive line is big as shit. Oh my God. Their offensive line against Colorado's defensive line was like a JV varsity team in high school going up against an NFL team. That's how it looked. Oregon's offensive line is massive. It's like they got some damn sumo wrestlers on that offensive line, man. And it's like Colorado's defensive line couldn't get any push at all. The only dude who was making some plays in Oregon's backfield was number 44 on Colorado's defense. And that was about it. Colorado allowed Oregon on 2nd and long to get 21 11-yard rushes like it was nothing. It's like anytime Colorado was able to generate a tackle for loss or a sack and cause Oregon to lose some yards, Oregon would get all of those yards back the following play, running the football. So they couldn't stop the pass. The secondary was non-existent. The run defense was non-existent. Coach Prime really needs to hit that transfer portal hard this offseason. He doesn't need to go after any skill position. Skill position is straight. You may only need about 2-3 more cornerbacks if you're Deion Sanders, and that's about it. You need to go in the transfer portal and go after every single defensive lineman and offensive lineman that's available. The majority of your upcoming transfer portal class for 2024 needs to be full of defensive linemen, offensive linemen, and linebackers because that's something that Colorado is severely lacking. And you know, I'm stupid because I come on here and I lecture you guys about how football is a game that's won and lost in the trenches. But yet my dumb ass picked Colorado, a team that was obviously outmatched up front. And normally when you're outmatched up front, the way that Colorado was in this game, you already lost. Oregon already had this game won before the game even started. Their offensive line was able to do whatever they wanted to do against Colorado's defensive line. And if you can't get no push, you're not going to be able to get off the field and you're going to give up a lot of big plays and you're going to get gashed. And Deion Sanders, you know, I felt a little bit bad for him every time the camera cut when Oregon kept on scoring. Like once it was 28-0, it was out of reach. And Deion Sanders was on the sidelines like, he was coaching up his guys, and you could kind of tell by his facial expression that he was really frustrated. Deion Sanders, he probably knew that they had a difficult task ahead of them. But they got out-coached in this game also. Colorado normally is a team that is pretty fundamentally sound. They don't really have a lot of turnovers. They normally are pretty disciplined. They don't commit a lot of penalties. Well, in this game against against Oregon, they had 12 penalties for 106 yards. False start penalties, holding penalties. Anytime Colorado was able to move the ball offensively, it was getting brought right back because the offensive line just was terrible. Not could they just block, but they also couldn't find a way to block without holding or committing a penalty. I mean, you look at this game coming in, you knew that Oregon probably was going to win convincingly. But I at least expected Colorado to be able to put more than 6 points on this defense. Oregon's defense definitely is way better this year than what it was last year. They're fast, they're physical, they're loaded on every single level, secondary, linebacker, defensive line. This is definitely a Georgia kind of defense that Dan Lanning has assembled up there in Eugene, Oregon, and Colorado didn't have no answers for it. Colorado has some really good receivers, but it doesn't matter how good your wideouts are if your quarterback doesn't have time to throw him the football. Travis Hunter playing in this game wouldn't have changed the final outcome all that much if we're just keeping it 100. I mean, yeah, he probably would have made some plays. He probably would have been able to help put Colorado in more favorable positions when it came to getting in the scoring range. But how was Deion Sanders going to be able to get him the ball when, as soon as he received the snap, he was getting pressure? I mean, Colorado wasn't going to win this game regardless if they had Travis Hunter or not. He wasn't going to have that big of an impact offensively. Defensively, maybe Oregon probably wouldn't have been scoring so easily. Maybe Travis Hunter playing would have made it a little bit more difficult for him, but they still would have hung 42 on him. We seem to forget that even when Travis Hunter was healthy, TCU put 40 on this defense. Colorado State put 35 on this defense when Travis Hunter was playing. Well, he got injured in that game, but even when he was in, Colorado State was still having success offensively. Travis Hunter is one player. And Deion Sanders alluded to this a couple of weeks ago. Oregon fans made it seem like Colorado was getting all this hype and they were overrated when they never were. Deion Sanders said 2 weeks ago that we're 7-8 dogs away from being a championship contender. It's not like Deion Sanders in Colorado was getting picked by people in the national media to beat Oregon or to win it all. This was a team that had a over-under win total of 3.5. This was a team that walked into a game where they were a 21-point underdog, and Vegas was right on this one. Vegas isn't wrong too many times. Like, if Vegas has a team being a multiple possession underdog, it's for a very good reason. They were wrong about TCU. They weren't wrong about this one. You definitely saw Colorado look like they were outmatched. Not just were they outmatched, but they got outclassed. And for Oregon, I give them a lot of respect for this win. Okay, even though it's like, bro, it's like you were expected to blow out Colorado. All right, nobody expected this game to really be all that close, minus me and a handful of people. Now, we probably would have thought that Colorado could have kept it within 21 points because 80% of bettors out there picked Colorado to cover. No, I don't know who picked Colorado to win this game outright other than me, but a lot of people thought that Colorado had the ability to hang around with Oregon. But, I was wrong. Oregon definitely was the way more better team. And I think for Oregon moving forward, they definitely are one of the best teams in college football. I'm eager to see what they're going to do when they go up against a team that's just as good as them, such as USC or Washington. But Oregon definitely came out and they were focused. They were locked in. If you listen to Dan Lanning's pregame speech, he didn't really do a lot of yelling. He didn't really do a lot of shouting. Like, it sounded like they really wanted to go in here and really make an emphatic statement to Deion Sanders. And I think that this probably is the best thing that could have happened to Colorado. And I'm not saying that they needed this loss because they needed to be humbled. I don't think that Colorado has been, non-humble. I don't really think they've been cocky or boastful. It's just they're confident. Like Deion Sanders said, if our confidence offends you, then that's a personal problem. Don't let our confidence interfere with your insecurity. I mean, we got to call this shit what it is. I mean, it was a beatdown. It was a smackdown. Oregon came, they saw, and they conquered. I mean, people are saying Deion Sanders had a bad game, but how can you judge what he did when he didn't really have time to do anything? When your offensive line only gives you less than a second to throw a football, you're not going to be able to have a good performance. I think Colorado moving forward, we now know what this team is. This team is probably going to be a 6-7 win football team. All right, and I had them at 7 wins before the season started. And I'm not a bandwagon fan. Like, I've been on the Colorado hype train before the Colorado hype train even left the station. You can go through several videos that we've made about Colorado before the season started. And I had this team making a bowl game. I've been defending Deion Sanders. So it's like, I'm not a bandwagon fan. Just because Oregon beat the shit out of Colorado doesn't mean I still don't believe in Coach Prime. I had pretty realistic expectations. Like, I knew me picking Colorado winning this game was a wild take. But it's like, what? Why not? I mean, if they lose, they lose. If they win, they win. It's not that deep to me. You know, like, Oregon beating Colorado this bad doesn't change how I view Colorado moving forward. We know that this team has a lot of work. It's a miracle that they've even have won 3 games up to this point, when most people didn't even think they were going to be able to win 2. Oregon is a great team. They proved that. This was a great measuring stick for Colorado football in terms of how far away are they from being on the level of Oregon, for being able to compete for a national championship. And obviously, they got a lot of work that they need to do, because that defense is dog shit. And even then, coming into this season, I thought that this defense will be way better than what it is. At least the secondary, outside of Shiloh Sanders and Travis Hunter, it ain't nobody good in this secondary. Just keeping it 100. And I'm a little bit surprised at that, because Deion Sanders is one of the greatest cornerbacks to ever play this game. He's in the NFL Hall of Fame. So I would think that if the defensive line was going to be terrible, at least the secondary would be great. But the secondary ain't no better from the defensive line. And the wide receivers are good, but the offensive line stinks. And you can't run the football, so you can't be balanced. Colorado, you know, like, they're not going to be able to compete with Oregon. And they may not be able to compete with USC. Maybe they have a better performance. Coach Prime said that after the game, he didn't really think it was a huge talent discrepancy being the reason why they lost the way they did. He feels like, you know, the coaching staff didn't really do a good job preparing for this game, and they didn't really execute. So if that is right, Colorado and Deion Sanders expect to put up a better fight against USC, but we'll see. Now, I'm not expecting Colorado to get blown out. You know, like, with Deion Sanders being the head coach, there's a level of play that I expect out of Colorado, regardless of who they play. I don't expect them just to put 6 points on the board. Like, the thing with Colorado is that you can't judge this team solely based on talent, because if you were judging this team based on talent, you probably wouldn't have had them winning more than 3 or 4 games. This team is normally pretty well coached. They don't really beat themselves. They don't really have a lot of costly penalties, and they had that in this game. And playing on the road in a tough atmosphere like Autzen Stadium is very difficult for any team to win that, especially a team that has a roster that's been constructed from the transfer portal. And I mean, it seems like all I'm talking about is Colorado, but what more do you want me to say about Oregon? I mean, they beat the shit out of Colorado. There's only so many adjectives and words I can use to describe Oregon's dominating win over Colorado. There's not really much to say about it. I mean, like, what can you say when your team is successfully converting fake punts with an offensive lineman? You're going for 2-point conversions, and you're successful. That just shows you're just a way better football team. Like, Dan Lanning and Oregon wanted to do more than just win this game. Like, they wanted to embarrass Coach Prime in the Colorado Buffaloes. Like, we keep talking about how Deion Sanders in Colorado keeps saying this is personal every single week, it seems like. But for Dan Lanning in Oregon, this was really personal for them. Like, they really had a goal of going out there on national television and wanting to beat the holy brakes out of Colorado. Like, they really wanted America to see this onslaught, this live murder that we witnessed on national television. But here's the thing. If you're an Oregon fan and you think that more people are going to be talking about you after this win than what they were before, you're wrong. People are still going to be talking about Colorado more than what they're going to be talking about you, despite the fact that you're a better football team and that you're probably going to be competing for the Pac-12 championship. You want to know why? Because of Coach Prime. It's just the Deion effect. Oregon beat Colorado when they were a 21-point favorite. The final outcome wasn't really that big of a surprise. Oregon felt like they were being slighted because nobody was talking about them. They weren't getting the media coverage that they deserve, when I don't really think it was that deep. You know, it's Deion Sanders. He's a Hall of Famer. He's one of the most recognizable athletes in the whole entire world. So, of course, when he becomes the head coach of any football program in Division I football, they're going to get a lot of media attention and people are going to talk about them. How was Colorado overrated or overhyped? They were a 21-point underdog. Most people that talked about this game on ESPN or FS1 knew that this probably was going to be a beatdown. It's not like Colorado was competing for a national championship. Like, I get why Oregon, had the level of intensity that they did, and I'm not trying to take that away from them. But all I'm saying is that, nothing's going to change in terms of how people view Colorado. Like, most people fuck with Deion Sanders. Most people are rooting for Colorado. Most people are still going to tune in to every single Colorado game. Colorado is breaking records. Oregon beat this team, but they didn't make the fan base lose confidence. One thing about Deion Sanders and the people that are supporting and rooting for Colorado is that people know what this team is. Nobody's expecting this team to win it all. Nobody expected for Colorado to be able to upset Oregon outside of me because I'm an idiot. So expectations for this program are pretty fair. But the reason why I address this is because there's been like hundreds of Oregon fans and non-Colorado fans that have been hitting me up saying, do you still believe, JT? Hell yeah, I still believe. Wait till Deion Sanders gets his recruits in. Wait until he continues to build this roster up and it's on the same level of Oregon. Like he said in his post-game press conference, you better beat me when I'm down because when I'm up, you're not going to like it. Yeah, I can't wait to see what Colorado does the next time they play Oregon in 2-3 years if they ever schedule them. And I'm pretty sure they will schedule them because this is personal. Like, Deion Sanders got embarrassed and humiliated. Did you not see the look on his face every time they did the camera cut on the sideline to him when Oregon was scoring once another touchdown? And word on the street is that Oregon just scored again. At the time we're recording this, Oregon just went up another touchdown on Colorado. It just became 48-6. I mean, Deion Sanders was embarrassed. Deion Sanders doesn't like being humiliated like that. And people try to make it seem like they needed to get humble. Like, Deion Sanders said it was never about us not being humble. When did we ever carry ourselves that we were not humble? Like, Deion Sanders literally has stated several times that, they're a couple of players away from being where they want to be, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to come in with a chip on their shoulder. They're not going to come in and expect to win every game, because why would you go into every game expecting to lose? That's just doesn't make a lot of sense. It's like, what if you're an Oregon fan, what did you want Colorado to say going into this game? Like, yeah, Oregon's a great team. Like, we know they're going to kick our ass, but we're going to give it everything we got. Like, no. If you're playing against a team like Oregon, you're expecting to be able to win, because nobody goes into any game, regardless if they know they're going against a team that's way more better than them, and says, yeah, like, we're not going to win at all. Like, of course, people are going to have confidence. You're mad because Colorado was confident in themselves? I mean, Oregon was the much better team in all phases. Bo Nix was a great quarterback. I mean, he outplayed Shedeur Sanders, although it was a little bit unfair because he had time to throw when Shedeur didn't. But let's just call it what it is. It was an ass whooping, an old-fashioned ass whooping. That's what Oregon gave Colorado. They told Colorado to bend over, pull your pants down, and we're about to give you a whooping with a leather belt. Like, I don't think this loss is going to sit well with Deion Sanders. This is definitely one of those losses that is going to motivate Colorado for the rest of the season. I don't think they got humbled. They just got a reality check. And the reality check is this, that there's going to be some games where Colorado is just going to be physically outmatched. this team could only be so decent at certain positions. Like, they got good receivers, they got a great quarterback, and they got a fantastic offense. But if you were expecting a well-rounded team, that wasn't going to happen. So, I don't really care about Oregon beating Colorado in the fashion that they did, because it doesn't really change my perception about Deion Sanders and how I feel about this program. I still believe in Colorado. I still believe in Coach Prime. You know, like, yeah, they took a really ugly loss and you expect better. You feel me? But, you know, like, if you really understand the game of college football, then you knew that this was something that was going to take time. Like, I don't get the notion that people are trying to push about, oh, Oregon ended the hype train. Like, bro, people were hyped about Colorado not because they thought they were going to be a national championship contender, but because of Deion Sanders being a head coach. That's what Oregon fans tend to not realize. That's what a lot of people who keep hating on Deion Sanders tend to not realize. They're getting media coverage because of Deion Sanders, fool. He's a Hall of Famer. He's in damn near every single commercial that you see being broadcasted during these college football games. Aflac. It's like so many commercials that we see Deion Sanders in. Like, people follow Colorado because of Deion Sanders, not because of the expectation of them being able to win the championship. They're not Alabama, Georgia, or Ohio State. They're getting media coverage because people are intrigued with seeing how this experiment is going to work with Coach Prime at Boulder, Colorado. So, props to Oregon for being able to make the most of the opportunity. Like, there definitely are going to be more eyes on Oregon following this win than what they were before, but that's still not going to change the amount of media coverage that Colorado is going to get. They got Deion Sanders. Like, if you are somebody who's around my age and you're 21, 24 years old, and Dan Lanning, Nick Saban, and Kirby Smart all knocked on your living room door, if they were to come into your house, your parents wouldn't know who the hell any of those people are. Meanwhile, if Deion Sanders knocks on your door and he comes into your living room, your mom, your dad, your grandpa, your grandfather, your auntie, everybody knows who Deion Sanders is. They like, oh, that's Deion Sanders with that bald head. I remember you. Yeah, like, maybe your mom or dad may know who Nick Saban or Kirby Smart is if they really follow college football like that. But outside of that, it's like everybody loves Deion Sanders. Like, Oregon fans made it seem like they were getting so much attention because people thought they were a great team. No. There's people who never watched college football ever in their life watching college football now because they want to watch Deion Sanders. My grandparents don't watch football. They're watching college football because they want to see Deion Sanders. That's why they're getting so much attention. People just want to see Deion Sanders. This shit ain't about championships and whatever else Oregon fans are trying to make it out to be. People just like Deion Sanders. You know, it's a good story, and I like the message that Dan Lanning delivered before the game. The Cinderella story is over. Like, it may sound like he's hating. It's like, damn, you don't like a good Cinderella story? Okay, cool, but you got to understand the message that Dan Lanning's trying to get through this team. Like, he wanted to embarrass Deion Sanders. You know, there's a reason why there's a target on Colorado's back, because everybody realizes the popularity that Colorado has due to the Deion Sanders effect. And that's why people want to embarrass Colorado, because they want to make an example. They want people to stop talking about Colorado. They're getting annoyed with it. These coaches are a little bit insecure, and I do think that there's a little bit of insecurity that Dan Lanning had about this, whether you want to admit it or not. I mean, when he was getting interviewed at halftime, I hope everybody that's tuned into the first half of this game is tuned in at halftime. Like, let's be honest, bro. I'm not about to continue to watch you beat the shit out of Deion Sanders in Colorado, fam. Like, you made a statement. Okay, you was up 28-0. What more did I need to see? I didn't need to see anything else after how I watched the first quarter turn out. Shout out to my guy Jonathan Soul with the donation. Break it down, young blood. It takes years to build a program. Yeah, like, I still believe in the Buffs. But to close off this segment, you know, Oregon, congratulations to you on the win. All right, I'm not going to be petty and take shots at you. I just find it a little bit weird how, you know, everybody was so extremely motivated to be the team that only won one game last year. You know, like, were you motivated because you were tired of the hype, or are you just annoyed that Deion Sanders is getting more attention than you? Because I can understand that. You're Oregon. You're a top 10 team. You're a perennial college football playoff contender. More people should be talking about you, but everybody is going to talk about Deion Sanders. I mean, he's a polarizing figure in pop culture. So, of course, Colorado's going to get more attention than you. I don't really think it was as personal as how they made it seem. Like, I just think that Colorado is a team that people are following because it's a good story. People love a feel-good story. People love rooting for the underdog. You know, I loved rooting for Oregon back in the Chip Kelly days when they were the underdog. You know, but in today's society, we just hate success. People in society get jealous of success. They get jealous of dominance. Everybody roots for Alabama to lose. Everybody roots for Georgia to lose. You feel me? That's just how it goes. And everybody's rooting for Colorado to fail. Well, not everybody, but all of the Deion Sanders haters are rooting for Colorado to fail. But the majority of people understand where Colorado is as a program, and most people still believe in Colorado. This was a beatdown by Oregon. The game wasn't close. It was 21-0. Once it became 21-0, you normally say, hey, bro, like, it's 21-0. You need to pass the controller. Let somebody else get up on the sticks. You feel me? But it's not like this was a surprise. You know, Oregon didn't expose Colorado. They didn't expose Colorado for being overhyped, because how the hell were they overhyped? They were a 21-point underdog. They were only projected to win 3.5 games this year. You know, like, I get the message that Dan Lanning sent to his team. You feel me? I get where Oregon fans are somewhat coming from, but let's stop this notion that Oregon exposed Colorado. Like, they didn't expose Colorado. Everybody knew what Colorado was heading into the season, and most people expected Colorado to get beat down in this game, other than me, okay? Because I'm an idiot. You feel me? But I still believe in Coach Prime, but congratulations to Oregon on the well-deserved win. I mean, they were obviously the better team, but I still believe in Colorado moving forward. But I think for Oregon, this shows that this team definitely is a legit contender to win this conference and possibly make it into the college football playoffs. All right, now, we got an instant classic in Ohio State versus Notre Dame. Ohio State pulled off the win 17-14, and I was wrong about this game too. I thought Notre Dame would have came away with the victory, and they nearly came away with the win, but unfortunately, they couldn't seal the game in the fourth quarter. Like, once Notre Dame, on their final offensive possession, punted the football, and they gave Ohio State and Kyle McCord a chance to drive down the field and win it, I knew Notre Dame was going to lose. You see, the problem that I have with Marcus Freeman is that in big games, when it comes down to the final drive, Notre Dame just doesn't execute, or they just don't find ways to win. And a good example of this is when they lost to Oklahoma State in the Fiesta Bowl. Now, although Marcus Freeman wasn't the official head coach at the time, he was the interim head coach, and this team had a good opportunity to beat Oklahoma State in that game. But unfortunately, when the game got close and Notre Dame needed to find a way to seal the victory, they were unable to do it. And that came to fruition in this game, because the thing with Notre Dame is that when they started to get the momentum on their side and they had a chance to really beat Ohio State, they weren't able to do it. They weren't able to seal the deal against Ohio State. Anytime you're playing against a team like Ohio State or Alabama or Georgia, you have to give them 0 opportunities to have a chance to win the game. Okay, Marcus Freeman, I get where he was coming from. He was like, we're not going to try to push the issue. Like, we trust our defense. Our defense has been playing good. But when you're going against an elite team like Ohio State, they have the ability to use something that I like to call the trapdoor ability. The trapdoor ability is that anytime a team like OSU or Georgia or Alabama gets on the ropes and it looks like they're about to lose, they use that trapdoor ability and they just find ways to win. And that's what Ohio State did. If you give Ohio State a chance to win the game, they're going to win the damn game, because it's Ohio State. Kyle McCord, I don't think he played a great game, but he didn't play bad neither. But boy, he delivered when Ohio State needed him to play his best ball the most. And that was the final drive of the game. The final drive of the game, he was perfect. He made good decisions with the football. He was accurate. He had an incredible throw to Emeka Egbuka that put Ohio State in position to ultimately go ahead and get the game-winning touchdown to win. Notre Dame, they had opportunities to close out this game. They had opportunities to come away with this win, but they weren't able to make the most of those opportunities. Ohio State, they played a really good game. Now, this wasn't the game that I don't think most Ohio State fans expected this game to be as close as what it was. You probably expected it to be a one-possession game, but 17-14 needing a game-winning drive to win, I don't think any Buckeyes fans saw this game going the way that it did. Notre Dame definitely was up for this game. They definitely looked like they belonged on the field with Ohio State. And this is one of the first times in a while that Notre Dame actually looked like they were just as good as Ohio State. Sam Hartman, I think he played okay, but I definitely think that his performance was a little bit disappointing. This is one of the biggest games that Notre Dame is going to play all season. This is the biggest game, or was the biggest game of Sam Hartman's career. And like I said, he didn't play bad, but you expect more. This was the game for Sam Hartman to really put himself on the map. This was the game where Sam Hartman possibly could have had some Heisman consideration, but he went 17 of 25, 175 passing yards, and he was solid. You feel me? But there were a few plays I felt like Sam Hartman left on the field. I definitely think that if Notre Dame was going to win this game, they were going to need Sam Hartman to do more. Kyle McCord didn't have to do a lot because Ohio State still was a more talented football team than Notre Dame. So naturally, when you got a more talented team, you don't have to be as dependent on your quarterback having a great game versus being in a situation that Notre Dame was. Notre Dame, the talent gap between Ohio State and them wasn't that large, but at the same time, you still need great quarterback play if you're going to be able to topple a giant like Ohio State if you don't have a team that's as talented as them. And Sam Hartman, he's played very well up to this point in the season, but I definitely feel like his performance in this game was a little bit disappointing. He could have made a couple of more big plays that possibly could have gotten Notre Dame to win in this game. And that goes back to my first point. Notre Dame wasn't able to bury Ohio State. Ohio State was still allowed to hang around in this game even when Notre Dame took the lead late. Even when Notre Dame had all the momentum on their side, they still couldn't find a way to finish off Ohio State. It's like if you ever play Mortal Kombat and you have to finish him come on the screen. That's when you use your finisher. And Notre Dame, anytime it was time for them to use their finisher and it was time to finally put the final nail in the coffin for Ohio State, they were unable to do that, and that's why they lost. And I look at Marcus Freeman and I say, hey, man, you got to be a little bit better in games like this. When games get tight, I think Marcus Freeman teams kind of fall flat or they fall short. But this game definitely gives you a lot of positive if you are a fan of the Fighting Irish, because now you know that, hey, if we can hang around with Ohio State, we can hang around with any team. You feel me? Now, if you're an Ohio State fan, you obviously have to love what you saw from your defense in this game. That Jim Knowles defense definitely has finally hit its stride. Last year, this defense was terrible. This year, polar opposite. This is probably one of the best defenses in all of college football. I mean, you got talent up front. You were tested against a really good offensive line. And although the offensive line, did a really good job holding up in pass protection, and they did do a really good job at opening holes up in the run game, your defensive line, when the game was on the line and they had to get the big stop to get Notre Dame's offense off the field, they came through. And that was the difference in this game. The fourth quarter, the final couple of minutes of this ball game decided the winner, and Ohio State was better in the closing minutes than what Notre Dame was. Now, the player of the game, for me, had to be Emeka Egbuka. We were all talking about Marvin Harrison and how Notre Dame was going to game plan for him and if they were going to be able to slow him down, and they did a really good job at that. I've never seen a game when Marvin Harrison Jr. didn't really have an impact at all. He was quiet. He only had 3 catches for 32 receiving yards. But the dude who was constantly making big play after big play for the Buckeyes was Emeka Egbuka. And it's easy to overlook Emeka Egbuka because of how fantastic of a talent that Marvin Harrison Jr. is. He's probably the best wide receiver prospect ever. I mean, we haven't seen a wide receiver this talented coming out of college since who? Calvin Johnson? That's the last time we had a receiver this good. But you look at Emeka Egbuka, he's no Marvin Harrison Jr., but he's a really good wide receiver in his own right. He had a really big catch that set up Ohio State to get that game-winning touchdown run. He had 7 catches for 96 receiving yards. Like, I think Emeka Egbuka needs to be talked about a lot more because this was a fantastic performance, and he was my player of the game. Kyle McCord, his final drive was impressive. You know, this is what you want to see out of your starting quarterback. You want to see poise. You want to see confidence. You know, you want your quarterback to put you in position to win games, not put you in positions to lose games. And that's what Kyle McCord did. You know, he didn't have a great game and it wasn't a perfect start, but it's not about how you start. It's about how you finished. And he finished pretty strong. And I don't think Kyle McCord is as good as the previous 2 quarterbacks that Ohio State has had before him, and Justin Fields or CJ Stroud. I definitely think that there's a pretty big drop-off in talent when you compare him to Stroud and Justin Fields, but he's still pretty solid. I like what I saw out of him the final drive of the game. But Ohio State got the win 17-14. Give your thoughts on Ohio State's win in the comment section below. Oregon didn't expose Colorado for being overhyped or overrated because they were neither one of those things. You see, there are Oregon fans who keep DMing me saying, oh, we exposed Colorado. Colorado was getting all this hype and attention for nothing, and they weren't even a great team. Like, the reason why Colorado was getting so much media coverage and so much attention is not because of the expectation of them being able to win a national championship or them being able to make it to the college football playoffs. The reason why Colorado gets so much media coverage is because of Deion Sanders being the head coach. What's so hard to comprehend about this? Deion Sanders is the most popular coach in all in college football. If you're the age of 21 through 30, if Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, or Ryan Day walk into your parents' living rooms, your mom and dad are probably going to say, who the hell is in my living room? They know that they're head coaches, but they don't know who the hell they are. But if Deion Sanders walks into your mother's or dad's living room, they're going to know who he is. You want to know why? Because your parents grew up watching Deion Sanders. Your grandparents, your great-grandparents grew up watching Deion Sanders. Like, almost everybody in America that watches college football knows who Deion Sanders is. But a lot of people who watch college football, you know, tend to make it seem like Colorado's getting all this attention because people think they're supposed to be a great team. No, people are watching Colorado because of Deion Sanders. My grandparents are watching Colorado games and they don't even watch football. They don't really even understand all the rules to football, but they're watching Colorado play because of Deion Sanders being the head coach. That's the prime effect. This not about them being overhyped or overrated. They were never overrated. I mean, bro, they had an over-under win total this season of 3.5. They were a 21-point underdog against TCU, a 21-point dog on the road against Oregon. How the hell were they overrated? I didn't hear a single person on ESPN or FS1 say that Colorado was going to win this game. You know, like, Oregon fans are trying to engineer a narrative that is just false. And Deion Sanders even called it out. You think that we needed to be humbled because we were arrogant or we were cocky? No, we're just confident. And if our confidence offends you, that's a personal problem. You see, the reason why people don't like Deion Sanders in Colorado is more because of it being personal. They get tired of seeing Colorado on their news feeds. I'm so tired of seeing all these Colorado posts. Well, the reason why you see all these Colorado posts is because you always comment how much you're tired of seeing Colorado. So when you engage with these posts about Colorado, they're going to be more posts about Colorado because they get clicks and engagement. That's what it's about. People love to watch Colorado, and people get all riled up about Colorado getting so much attention because of Deion Sanders being there. It's not about them, and the expectations of them being a championship contender. You see, like, only the people who are Deion Sanders haters or just don't like to see success are rooting for Colorado to fail and are thinking that Colorado is overhyped or overrated. You see, you can only be overrated if, people overvalue you for what you actually are. People knew that Colorado overachieved up to this point. Nobody thought that Colorado was going to beat TCU other than my crazy ass and a couple of other people. I mean, they beat Nebraska. They survived Colorado State. Like, if somebody would have told you that Colorado was going to be 3-1 heading into their game against USC, you probably thought they were crazy. You see, the reason why Colorado has garnered so much attention is not just do they have Deion Sanders as their head coach, but with the fact that they had overachieved prior to getting beat down by Oregon. So if you're overexceeding expectations and you got Deion Sanders and Shedeur Sanders is balling out, then what do you think is going to happen? You feel me? Like, we got to stop with this whole overhyped and overrated nonsense, because the only people who are calling this team any one of those two things are the people who don't really follow college football all that much. And I see people keep throwing out the term casual when the people who are throwing out these casual terms or trying to label you a casual are the people who don't really understand how the hell college football works. It's funny that people who are mostly calling other people casuals when they root for Colorado don't understand that Colorado is a team that is not expected to compete that much. They probably at best are going to win 7-6 games at most. You feel me? So if you're a casual, you're probably going to watch a Colorado game and expect them to be a great team. But if you actually follow college football and you understand how college football works, you will know that it takes time to build a championship contender. You got to build a team through recruiting in the transfer portal, and it takes at least 2 to 3 years to be able to do that. Hell, look at LSU and USC last year. Although those teams exceeded expectations and they were able to improve their team by a lot via the transfer portal, they didn't win a national championship, nor did they make it to the college football playoffs. You want to know why? Because it takes time to build up a dynasty. It takes time to build up greatness. Alabama, their first season under Nick Saban, lost to Louisiana Monroe. They only won 7 games. They won a championship contender out the gate. It may take Colorado less time than other programs to become a championship contender, but they were never going to be a national championship caliber team in one season with everything that they got from the portal. So if you were thinking that, then you're the casual and you don't really understand how this sport works. And a lot of people that are watching Deion Sanders don't even watch a lot of college football. More times than not, you're watching Colorado because of Deion Sanders being there, and you're intrigued and seeing how this thing is going to turn out. Like my grandparents are watching Colorado games, and they don't know much about football. They don't even watch the NFL or college football at all up until Deion Sanders went to Boulder. So it's like all these people who are now starting to watch Colorado that are trying to label this team as being overhyped or overrated, obviously don't follow college football and don't understand the intricacies of this sport. College football isn't the NFL. You don't just sign guys free agency and have a good draft and poof, you're a championship contender. In the NFL, you can out-coach people. You can scheme your ways to win. In college football, you can only scheme so much if you don't have the talent. Eventually, when you're going up against a team like Oregon or USC, you can have great play calling and a great scheme, but it still won't matter if you don't have the same amount of talent as the team that you're going up against. And that's just the reality of college football. You got to have talent if you want to win. Even if Deion Sanders is as good as a head coach as a Nick Saban or Kirby Smart, it's still not going to matter because he doesn't have all his guys. Deion Sanders a couple of weeks ago said that we're like 7, 8 guys away from being the program that we want to be. We're 7, 8 dogs away from being able to compete with the Oregon or Washington or USC. You don't just get to that level over the course of one offseason. You know, it takes at least 2 to 3 years to be able to build that kind of roster. So Oregon beating Colorado didn't expose them. What got exposed about Colorado that we didn't already know? We knew that they didn't have an offensive line. We knew that they didn't have a defensive line. We knew that their defensive line was dog shit and that they probably weren't going to get too many stops in this game. So what about Colorado got exposed that we didn't already know? We already knew that Oregon was a mismatch against Colorado. We knew that Oregon probably was going to smash them. There's a reason why they were a 21-point favorite. To be overrated, you have to have expectations that are unrealistic. It wasn't unrealistic to expect Colorado to win at least 3 games or more. You know, like Colorado has overachieved, if anything. So if they have overachieved, how are they overrated? Once again, they had a projected win total of 3.5, and they're already at 3. They've already tripled the win total from last year. So what makes this program overrated? Getting a lot of media coverage doesn't make you overrated. You got Deion Sanders. At the end of the day, ESPN and FS1, they're trying to make money. You want to know how you make money? By generating high ratings. And you know who generates high ratings? Deion Sanders. So therefore, if you have somebody who generates a lot of attention and a lot of high ratings that brings in revenue, guess what you're going to do? You're going to tend to push them and try to cover them more so you can continue to bring in high ratings. Did you know that since Deion Sanders became the head coach of Colorado, that in their first 3 games, they have amassed $90 million in ad revenue? If they continue at that pace, they could probably have nearly almost $1 billion in ad revenue generated for that school by the end of this season. There's a reason why Colorado gets so much attention. It has nothing about the expectations of them being able to compete. It's just about being able to run a great business. And running a great media business or company involves you giving a lot of coverage to people that want to be, you know, watched. People want to watch Deion Sanders. You can't get mad at that. He earned that. He's a Hall of Famer. He's one of the most famous athletes of all time. You feel me? He's on hell of commercials, hell of advertisements. Everywhere you go, you can't escape Deion Sanders. Every time you turn on your TV and you watch an NFL or college football game, you're guaranteed to see at least one Deion Sanders commercial or at least one thing that references Deion Sanders. It's not Colorado being overhyped or overrated. It's just good business. You know, if you're running a business company, you want to promote the people that are going to bring in the biggest audience. And that's what Deion Sanders does. What's so complicated about this? You feel me? I think that this is pretty self-explanatory about how this works when it comes to business and media. You have Deion Sanders, a polarizing figure, somebody that people either love or hate. And when you have somebody as polarizing as Deion Sanders that people love or hate, people are going to tune in to watch to do one or two things: root for him to win or root for him to fail. And that's why Colorado and Colorado State broke ESPN's record for being the most watched game in their company history. Every game that Colorado plays in does record viewership. You want to know why? Not because people expect this team to compete for a championship, but because they want to see the results every single week with Deion Sanders being the head coach. Plus, you have Shedeur as the quarterback. You know, there's other things that make Colorado appealing. Even if Colorado was 0-3, people would still be watching them because of Coach Prime. So they're not overhyped. What is being overhyped? What is being overrated? Nobody really has a textbook definition about it, but Colorado, people want to watch them because of Coach Prime, because they're an interesting team, and plus, they're a Cinderella story. You got Deion Sanders, and he's 3-1. Who's not going to watch? You watched them against Oregon because you wanted to see them lose, or you either wanted to see them win and pull off the upset. That's why they get so much media coverage. You be complaining on Twitter, why is everybody always talking about Colorado? Why is there so many Colorado posts? Because, fool, you comment on it and you engage with it. And when you engage with the content, they give you more of it. If you don't want to see Colorado on your feed, guess what? Don't interact with Colorado content. Just keep swiping. It's common sense, people. It's crazy how they call it common sense, but a lot of people lack it. This is it for this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. If you enjoy it, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. We go live Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. Like, subscribe to the channel.